Cool. So, hey everyone, I'm Fiona. I'm with Craig here. I've known him for several years. We went to the San Francisco Symphony before. We're really into piano music and other stuff. So, a little bit about Craig. He is a pianist, a drummer. He's done classical music. He's also done stuff in bands. He also does audio engineering and production. So, Craig, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit more?
Yeah, hi, I'm Craig Dukes, and like she said, and yeah, we've known each other for a couple years and have shared similar interests. And I believe I met you just through Mo, and on Facebook. That was how I found you. And I'm a big Sleepy Time fan, and all of those guys for the East Bay. So yeah,
Awesome. So, yeah, I guess you want to talk a little bit about like how you got where you're at right now. So,
yeah. Well, essentially, I started playing drums when I was 3, and my musical influences were my mother, my stepfather, my father, and my friend Doug Hoven, who's was a drummer with Jet Boy. Those 4 people kind of like introduced me to a lot of the music that I grew up with as a child and played on drums throughout, uh, my early years from very young up and through teen years. So they were a big influence on, kind of shaping my style. So the versatility was, anything from the Jackson 5 to Tower Power to Elton John to any, styles, Cal Jader, Latin jazz. So there was lots of metal, classic rock, also played in school from a really early age. I think it was like third grade. Played in concert band, the different bands all the way through junior high and through high school. Played lots of different styles of music. I actually got a lot into classical when I was about 16. I heard Yngwie Malmsteen play Bach, and that was really grabbed my interest. So I started learning. I actually learned Bourrée, the famous E minor, ba 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 ba, because Yngwie played it.
mhm.
And at that time, that was really popular. Also, I ended up meeting this guitarist. His name is Chip Wagner, also known as the Harlequin on Facebook, and he was really into Priest and metal stuff. So we ended up playing music together, and he brought me down to Turk Street Studios in San Francisco, which turns out to be a place where kind of my teenage years, my musical experiences were kind of shaped by that place. It's down the Tenderloin in between Taylor and Jones, real rough area. But Anvil Chorus, who was a prog rock band back then, there's still a lot of the members uh, around doing music. Thane Rasmussen, Doug Piercy, Joe Bennett. These guys are all big part of my younger years as a teenager. And down at that studio, Faith No More used to play there. Mike Rutherford from Genesis actually came down there to produce a band called Red Seven. There was a ton of bands down there at the time. Metallica used to come down and hang out, and Exodus, and kind of all those guys. So that ended up shaping a lot of the stuff that I went on to, become as a drummer. It was a really big influence in my life. So
That's awesome. Yeah, and just it's like a variety of interests kind of combined together. I'm curious how, so the studio, like Brian Eno was always like the studio is kind of my instrument. Like,
yeah,
how would you say that has applied with yourself using the studio as an instrument? I mean, you have an amazing studio.
thanks. Yeah. Brian Eno's he's very interesting character. I actually just watched an interview with him a couple months ago, and how his sound thing, where he was such a big sound guy. I'm more about whoever the artist is who comes in to record with me. I want to make sure that they get their message across, but also, that they're open to hear what I have to say in terms of how I produce music and how I advise clients regarding recording and things that can help them make their music come to life a lot better. And it's like that psychology of audio engineering, where when you're producing someone, they have to feel comfortable. And if they don't, you have to kind of think about, okay, what's going to make this person feel better about what they're doing. So there's that, and, asking them questions about the type of sound that they're looking for. So I have, a really big collection of software, all the native instrument stuff, which I'm sure you're familiar with that.
Oh
And,
yeah.
Universal Audio, I have their pack. I've got a Apollo 4. So, finding out kind of, what a client wants, working with them, but always making them feel comfortable, because it's hard when you're recording, especially if you've got multiple people, to get everyone on the same page. But yeah, it's one of those things where it just takes a lot of experience, and going to SAE to learn audio engineering helped me a lot. The one thing I got out of that school actually was playing music with other people more for their projects, because I was the only drummer there at the time. So everyone would come to me, and I had all this homework to do. But I was at that school, like 12 hours a day, and then I would come home, and then I would audio engineer for 4 or 5 hours, and then go to sleep for 3 or 4 and go back to school.
Oh my
So
gosh.
yeah, for 9 months it was
Wow.
really, really intense. But most of my mixing stuff I actually learned from clients coming to me, and then learning what the big engineers do, like Chris Lloyd Alge or any of these big audio engineers, Andrew Sheps, learning what they do to get their sound per se. But I also use my ears to kind of find the type of sound that I'm looking for as much, because I find that today's music, a lot of it's just over compressed, and it just takes the life out of a lot of stuff. So
Yeah, no, that's interesting. So you as the producer, you're kind of having to, help your client kind of create this all these different tracks, but they might have, they might bring to you different influences. Like, I want it to sound like this, but I want the vocals to sound like this, and I want to kind of have this type of effect. So that's a really tricky thing. I feel like being a producer is kind of one of the hardest things, because you have to kind of know every single style of music. You have to kind of know how stuff is recorded. You have to be able to see how mixing different genres together can work or can kind of detract, because you have to kind of know what's in the foreground, what's in the background. Is the client kind of asking for something that's going to, it kind of reminds me a little bit of like film scoring, when like directors would ask me to combine different genres together, and I'd be like, okay, I'll try my best, we'll see what kind of happens. And if it sounds great, that's awesome. If it sounds horrible, then at least you kind of tried it out. So,
yeah, yeah, exactly. And I've recently been listening to Mr. Bungle a lot, and Secret Chiefs 3, who my friend Matt Lebowski plays keyboards in. And Mr. Bungle's kind of Mike Patton, Trace Bruins, those guys. I had listened to them in the early '90s, but a lot of people had turned me on to them. For some reason, it didn't click. And then just like, I don't know, about 3 weeks ago, I found their music, and oh my God, the way they blend styles. It's not like just that they're doing it, but they audio engineer it in a way that makes you think, how are they going to do this live? But then I went and watched them live, and it was crazy how good they were able to set their patches. So when they go from like traditional jazz to like speed death metal to the Beach Boys. Like they're switching patches, and you're going, wow, you know, the reverb on this really sounds like a 1960s Beach Boys song. And then they go into like Thelonious Monk, and they're like, it's dry. You're like, you know, that takes so much knowledge. So like the Mr. Bungle stuff, wow. And you know, they influenced Sleepy Time Gorilla Museum and Secret Chiefs. I mean, Trey was, you know, in Mr. Bungle, so but it's just incredible. And the way Trey Spruance takes stuff and will mix tunings. So he's like mixing Western tunings with non-Western music tunings. It's incredible stuff. And to see him pull it off live is just amazing. But yeah, I
Yeah.
love that versatility in music, and that's actually why I moved out here to the East Bay to play music with Mark Stickman, who you know, had a lot of Zappa-esque music, and he had, you know, a catalog of like 600 songs,
Oh, wow.
and some of it's still unreleased. That I believe the link is in there from his Glass Promenade, which I play on 9 songs on that. But there's like 40 Bay Area musicians, maybe more, who played on that record. From everyone from David Emmergluck of the Counting Crows, Jim Bogus, who's the drummer with the Counting Crows. He played with Sheryl Crow, a lot of ex-members of like Nora Jones's band, and just this big, you know, the Sleepy Time people. Mo's probably on there.
Mm.
But yeah, that's why I actually moved out here to the East Bay, was to play that music that had, you know, one song. You got 5 styles in one song, because it was a challenge, extremely difficult to learn that music. And you know, the other members of that band were actually my neighbor who lives right across the street. John Brooks was the bass player. Wally Sherrold, who now lives in London. Rob Reich, who I believe you know. Robin Reynolds was the cellist. So all these people, they were all Oberlin graduates. And so it
Mm.
was me and Stickman. Stickman went to Berkeley, and I just studied pretty much in school and through private instructors. So it was an interesting combination to have someone like Stickman, who wrote all this amazing music, and then he brings these people in, and you know, with an open mind. But they're like, you know, you get these 4 brains together from Oberlin, and it's like, wow, the rehearsals were, I mean, used to rehearse 2 3 times a week, you know, 2 hours each time. So, and we played a bunch of shows. There's a bunch of videos on YouTube of My Hero was the name of the band, at the Plow, and you know, all the Bay Area places. So that's why I ended up out here. So you know, now it's so amazing to be out in the East Bay, because there's so much great music out here and so many great musicians, you know.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. So the polystylistic thing is really kind of looks like it kind of prevails a lot of your music. So, and a lot of the stuff that you're interested in. Um, I don't know if you've heard of Schnicka. He's a composer, Russian composer. He just died in 2006, but
Okay.
he was probably, I would say, one of the composers that would blend many different styles of music. He would actually quote, you know, different composers, like actually steal like a good, I don't know, 20 seconds from like Beethoven's Fifth or something,
Yeah.
and then put it in there, and then like, but kind of like, you know, mess it up. He would kind of, no, so he's like taking like old styles, new styles, and he's like the ultimate DJ where he's just like combining stuff. He'll like take a little snippet of a piece and, you know, throw it in. It's almost like throwing a wrench into the mix. Uh,
Yeah, Stickman did that all the time.
mm.
Yeah, yeah, he was brilliant at that. But I'm gonna check that guy out. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. That was a composer that I was very much influenced by. And then also Stravinsky, you know, the way he would kind of write music, he would kind of do like it's almost like a soap opera where he would have one idea and then all of a sudden this, you know, completely different idea. So like kind of multiple storylines kind of happening at once. And he would just kind of do this block method where he would just kind of copy or cut and then put something different in between. And so it
Yeah.
was just this very jarring kind of like cut or jump to a new texture or a new thing in music that was kind of, I guess it's like soap opera.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting because like Mr. Bungle has that. They like you hear some of it and it sounds like 1960s sci-fi soap opera Hawaiian bossa nova metal. You just like what? But literally like 30 seconds of this, 45 seconds of that, 20 seconds of that, or even like 2 seconds, but like metal and then back to jazz. It's just crazy.
Yeah, I actually did notice that in their music of this like sudden shift to something new and then a
Yeah,
shift to back going back to there. So it
yeah,
is, it's almost like this like block method, soap opera method that Stravinsky likes to use rather than, like most composers would take an idea and develop it and you would kind of see the progression of that idea. It's like, no,
yeah,
we're going to just, do a crude kind of like insert this idea right here and do
yeah.
this, this rhythm thing, and then go back to this melodic kind of wandering thing, and then back to this like heavy, like metal kind of like, syncopated rhythm. And there's something, oh, the band Phantomos kind of,
Oh yeah, that's Patton, Mike Patton.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I saw some stuff recently. Actually, probably something we'll talk about. Well, there was a video of Mike Patton with Phantomos in Russia, and he was dressed up like some Russian czar. And I was like listening to the drummer going, "Who's that drummer?" And look over, it's Terry Bozzio.
Oh, nice,
And
nice.
I'm like, what a combination. It was just so mind blowing to see him with Mike Patton, who I've just kind of really gotten myself refamiliarized with, but didn't realize like how great Mike Patton was until just recently, which is very strange. But I was curious about your experience with Dale Bozzio and the
Oh
telepathic
yeah.
birds thing.
That was when we were just playing. We were playing Telepathic Birds. We were just playing, outside of the Great Northern, and all of a sudden, at the very end of the night, Dale walks out and she's all dancing to our music and like filming us, and I'm like, oh my god, like trying to hold it together because like, it's like she's like amazing. Like I've seen her, when she was younger. That's kind of, the earlier stuff that she did with Missing Person,
Yeah, yeah.
and it's just like mind blowing to kind of see her in person, and just I don't know, just the energy was really good. um it was kind of weird, I guess, like people, none of the original band members except for Dale, but
Yeah.
yeah, she's just like, wow, you guys have a lot of balls to be doing this, like, just like doing it DIY guerrilla style with the generator.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was pretty inspiring. And so yeah, I hope to follow up with they have a touring agent that they said please send your music, and I completely forgot about that, so I'm going to.
Oh wow. Yeah, no,
But
Terry Bozzio is a huge influence on me. You know, when there used to be that guitar center right down the street here before they moved to Emeryville, he did a drum clinic. And I mean, it was a half a block from my house. So, I went down there like 3, 4 hours before the clinic and I saw this huge trailer out front. And I'm like, oh, that must be Terry, because if you've seen his drum set, he's got like 9,000 pieces.
right,
He's
right,
like 8 bass drums, and then there's just stuff everywhere. So I
right.
walked in there, and he's in there by himself setting this drum set up. I couldn't believe it, and no one's bothering him. I just walked up to him and I was like, "Hi, Mr. Bozzio, how you doing?" He's like, "Hey, how's it going?" It's like, "Oh yeah, I saw your clinic and this year and that year and with Sonny Emery." And he goes, "Oh yeah, I remember that." And so I just sat there and talked to him for like 15 minutes,
That's awesome.
and he was so cool. And afterwards, well, when the clinic began, I came back later, and then I actually ended up sitting next to Dave Black, who was this drummer who played with Duke Ellington.
Oh wow.
Duke Ellington, and there was another, I think Benny Goodman. But I took a master class and studied with Dave Black many years before that. But when I went in there, this guy Elvis, who works at Guitar Center, I think he still works there actually. He's like, "Hey, can you save a seat for Dave Black?" So I sit next to Dave Black, at the Terry Bozzio Drum Clinic. And I'm like,
Wow.
okay, what kind of question can you ask Terry Bozzio, right? After I sat and talked to him for 15 minutes. So it just popped in my head. I said, "Can you tell us about the Zappa audition?" And he just gave me this funny look, and he took a big drink of water and was like, "Ah." And then he went on for 15 minutes and told the whole story. It was hilarious. So,
Oh my God, that's awesome. One thing I really noticed about you is you're constantly like learning. So you're taking master classes, you're, you know, meeting people, you're in these music communities, like, and I think that's like part of I don't know, it's just you're like this encyclopedia. You kind of gather all this musical knowledge and stuff.
yeah,
Um,
it's
yeah,
it's
say more about
that's yeah, it's really cool that you noticed that. um, like me getting into UC Berkeley was just that was a masterclass thing. I went to go see Jonathan Biss do a masterclass that I heard about from a concert I went to at UC Berkeley, and walked into the hall, Morrison Hall, which is 125 Morrison Hall there at UC Berkeley, and there was this funny English guy interviewing Jonathan Biss, and the guy was hilarious. I thought he was really smart, super smart. And I didn't realize he's a professor there teaching music history. It's Nicholas Matthew. And so, I had asked Biss a couple questions, and he recognized me from some other events that I had went to. And so we got into talking. I asked him about if he was ever going to record the Liszt transcription of the Beethoven symphonies. And he was kind of like, "No, I'll leave that to the symphonies." And, so went on, but this professor was just hilarious. So after it was over, I asked him, I said, "Hey, I'd really like to go to UC Berkeley. I'd like to study music here." And he's like, "Oh, just go to the front desk and, talk to him." So of course I go there not realizing, oh, you have to, apply, and you got to get accepted, you got to take all the tests. So like everything, math, algebra, of course, I didn't realize it because I was just, naive. But so as I was walking out, I asked the woman, and she told me, "This is what you need to do." She goes, "Why don't you audit a class?" And I was like, "Oh, what's that?" She's just like, "Just talk to the professor and ask him if you can attend a class." And I was like, "Oh." And as soon as I walked out the door, here's Nicholas Matthew right there.
Oh,
So I just asked him, I was like, "Hey, do you have any classes I could audit?" And he goes, "Oh, I'm doing a class on Beethoven Tuesdays and Thursdays. Be here 1 o'clock, whatever." And I'm like, "Okay." So I got in there, and then I went to another concert, and I was walking out of the concert talking to someone. My piano tech is actually one of the people there who works on Nicholas's pianos. He's got like 7 pianos of, hundreds of years apart, all these forte pianos and harpsichords. And so as I was texting him, I heard Craig. I look up, and he was standing right there, and I was like, "Ah, hey," and we talked about this guy who played the hammered clavier, and I said, "Are you doing any classes?" He goes, "I'm teaching music history Tuesday and Thursday." I'm like, boom, okay. So kind
wow.
of just all of this stuff's fallen into place, and now they got more concerts coming here in February, so I'm going to go find out what else he's teaching and try and get into there. But yeah, for me, it's just learning it's so important. I realized going to SAE, um, that learning process was incredible. I had to learn so many things I could have never even fathomed. Like running boards and patch bays and a lot of that stuff. But my studio is just simplified big time. There's no, you don't really need all this outboard gear anymore because Universal Audio's plugins are so good. They're just incredible. But yeah.
Right, right. Awesome. Well, I remember you talked about so when you talked about the Beethoven class, it made me think of how UC Sandy or UC San Jose actually has in their library one of Beethoven's pianos.
Oh yeah, there's the Ira Brilliant Center there.
Yeah, have you played on it?
I haven't. Wait a minute. No, actually, that is not true. I have played it. It's inside of the Ira Brilliant Center. Is that the one
Yeah,
you're talking about?
yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I've been there several times. they have the first editions of, the Beethoven sonatas, which I went and actually got copies of a lot of stuff
Oh, wow.
from that place. And let's see, the Pathétique, the Moonlight, Opus 101, and then Opus 7, the first editions. It's really interesting to see those. But yeah, I have played that piano. It's pretty interesting. The difference in sound, I mean, from a modern instrument it's just so different, you
Right.
know.
Like I was gonna say the soundboards weren't, and also the harp part, the metal harp part wasn't as strong. So I guess the string tension wasn't, didn't allow the strings to really resonate
Yeah, yeah,
as
yeah. We
much.
had actually had one of Nicholas Matthews' pianos in class. He brought one of the pianos in there for people to
Oh,
play,
wow.
which was it's pretty interesting to see people play it and react. And he's like, play the pedal, and they're like, yeah, there's nothing there. And I'm like, use your knee. Like, oh, the pedal's right there. But everyone got to play a little bit, so I sat down and played a few bars of Opus 10, and then ran out of. And everyone was laughing because they knew the piece, of course.
Right, right, right.
But yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, speaking of learning that piece, I've been over 9 months now, every day, at least 2 hours a day on Chopin Opus 10 number one. And I've
Wow.
wanted to play that piece since I was like 20, and it's just been so many years, so far out of my reach. But now that I have a concert grand, and I finished recording the Opus 62 number one nocturne, which was, it wasn't perfect, but I posted it anyway. I didn't care because it was just such an achievement to be able to play something like that. I just started going at it methodically. And I watched your interview with Colin, was it the
Oh,
pianist?
yeah, Colin. Yeah.
Yeah, and you guys mentioned, oh God, Rebecca Bogart.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I took some Tubman lessons with her back
She
in the
lives
day.
up the street from me.
Oh, crazy.
Yeah, I
Wow.
took lessons from her. I took like 4 lessons with her, and I went there to learn that Opus 10 number one, but
Oh, nice.
she wouldn't teach it to me. She said it was too hard.
Oh,
So I was like, okay. And she just wanted to retrain me. And I was like, I don't have time to completely retrain in Topman technique. Like, I want to learn a few things and apply it to what I'm doing, but I don't have, 7 years or whatever it would take to relearn because, I've been playing piano for some time. But yeah,
right.
I did learn some things from her and I applied them. But a lot of it, I learned off of YouTube watching. Alan Frazier is one pianist who was a teacher who did a tutorial on that with someone, and he knew a lot about Taubman stuff and
Mm,
was he's a little different, and his technique of he did some more shifting, which I find that shifting. Oh, and the other thing you talked about with Colin was the uh, the fingering stuff.
yeah, the
So
importance of having fingering
yeah,
now.
and
Yeah.
that etude I've seen so many different fingerings. Edna Galansky, who's like the head of the Galansky Institute for Taubman technique,
Mhm.
she's the one I learned a lot of it from. But I've learned too that in some of the passages, I think it's like bar 38 where it starts on the D and it has 5 on the D, and then it goes, you have to reach down here. So it's like, why not just do 5 3 1 and then connect a finger like this over to the next E or G where the
Mhm.
octave is with the left hand, so da da da, and then connect a finger it, da da da. So there's a lot of that I'm doing in there that's taking more time to learn this piece because it has to go really slow.
Right,
Um,
right.
you
There's so many
know,
like arpeggiated passages for that opus.
yeah.
So yeah,
Well,
I feel like everything
go
has to
ahead.
be meticulously like written out, and you have to kind of decide. Like there's a point where I have the fingering. This is mostly in Bach that like fingering
Yeah.
is so important. but also Chopin and Beethoven, like Schnabel, that edition of the Beethoven sonatas, like the fingering
Uh,
is kind of weird. I don't know if you've looked at that edition, but it
yeah,
works. Like those actually really work really well. They're kind of awkward, but
yeah,
they all like it's kind of interesting how it works. But
yeah. The
like,
Schnabel, yeah, Opus 111, the second
mhm.
move, the Ariata second movement. I read through Schnabel's, and yeah, his fingering in that is really good.
Yeah. So I really appreciate that. Now I know the like when Colin was showing me a passage in the Rock 3, like I was doing this whole cadenza, in the first movement, after the main cadenza, the ossia, you go through that beautiful ba da dee da da ba dum ba da 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 ba da. I'm singing a little
Yeah,
faster than it really goes. But then there's this whole kind of mini cadenza that happens. And I was doing it mostly all in my right hand. And Colin's like, why aren't you using your left hand here? It'd make it so much more easier.
yeah,
Because it's not because the composer's writing it in a way where it looks like it's all for right hand. But the composer,
yeah.
you could do anything with the fingering as long as it like sounds better, whatever fingering kind of works.
Yeah, exactly. And the for me that Opus 10, it's like Chopin said, it makes you unlearn everything, which, at first when I was learning it and I went back to play other repertoire, I was like, what happened? But now that I've been on it for 9 months, it's like opened a lot of doors because it's made me realize, oh, since the whole piece is like fast and forte, most of it there's dynamics and you got to use them, accordingly. But it's really helped me with technique and other pieces, making me realize, oh, it's not really necessary to key bed. It's like you can't key bed, push harder. Like when you strike the notes, you need to completely let go, and like all of the wrist and the forearm and everything needs to. There's a lot of this going on because you're, climbing up the piano, like your whole body. I didn't realize how important the left hand was. So I was practicing the left hand alone, feeling, where the body moves. And there's
Mm.
just so much to that, and it's, 2 minutes of music that take 2 years to learn it, probably.
That's how it always is, right?
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah.
But so I'm curious, like, how did you bring like you were a drummer first and then you became a pianist. So how have you transferred any of the technique stuff that you've learned from drumming to piano and vice versa? Or is it kind of two separate worlds for you?
Yeah. It's kind of two separate worlds. I think, and with piano for me, it's, mostly romantic right now. I'm mostly on Chopin, but I'm also working on the second movement of the Schubert B flat.
Wow.
Beethoven's just always been such a hard struggle for me. Bach is so naked. It's like you have to be in a certain mode, I think, to learn Bach and to play Bach well.
Mm.
But right now it's just mostly Chopin. I'm not, I did mess around with some jazz stuff when I was younger in my 20s on piano, but never really went anywhere. And I mean, essentially, it's just, classical, romantic, and pure for the love of just learning music, really. But yeah, drums and piano definitely, um, separate worlds. I
Hmm.
haven't done any of the incorporating stuff. If you see these guys who play behind the drum set and they got keyboards and a bass and a drum set, and then they're like pretty incredible stuff, actually. But yeah,
Right. Yeah. No, I think I like what you're doing. I like that you're kind of, trying many different things. You're playing many instruments. You're kind of learning about music, but many styles of music. And that's just funny that you also know tubbin technique is not very well known. I feel like it's kind of like a really getting into like the piano technique world. So that's kind of
yeah,
cool that you know about all these things.
yeah, the specialized kind of stuff. And I mean, when I was 16, in high school, I was in jazz band, but I was listening to and playing on drums, AC/DC, Rush, but also Weather Report. You know,
Nice.
uh, I love Zominal, Airto, Chick Corea, Herbie Hancock, fusion, world music, and I was kind of dabbling in piano at that time, like pop piano, like Journey stuff, Journey, pop songs, love songs. And oh, speaking of Herbie and Chick, this piano that I got from Piedmont is it was an SF jazz piano, so that piano's been played by Chick Corea and Herbie Hancock.
Oh, nice. Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and it was also in residence at the SF Ballet for a while, and I believe it was also at Davies Hall. So that
Oh,
piano's
wow.
had some pretty nice hands on it.
Good. That's good energy for the piano.
Yeah, absolutely, the vibe. And I don't know if you saw it, but there was, when Chick Corea was doing all those live streams on Facebook during the pandemic.
Hmm.
I don't know if you saw any of that,
No,
but
I didn't. I didn't.
I was watching it once live, and he goes, I'm gonna play this Scriabin piece here, and I was like, oh my god, it is gonna be Opus 11 number 4. I know it because I've seen him do it before, and so I just typed in the comments, oh hey chick, yeah I play that piece, and he just walked over to his computer and goes, oh hey Craig. Oh, you play that piece? And I was like, oh my god,
That's so cool.
It's like I've seen Chick Corea live a lot with his electric band and Return
Yeah.
to Forever and all that stuff. So for me, that was just a big thrill to him say
Yeah.
that. But yeah, and man, I'm very lucky that I got to see him live. I saw him at what's that club in Oakland? Not Kimball's, Yoshi's.
Yoshi's.
Yeah, I saw him live there. Was that probably like 2006? He
Hmm.
was there for like 3 nights. I went to all 3 nights.
Wow.
Yeah, and that was with Dave Weckl on drums, who's like my all-time favorite drummer. And
Amazing.
John Patitucci, Frank Gambale, Eric Rosenthal on sax. Those guys, yeah, right in the front row,
Wow.
just mind blowing. And Dave Weckl at the time had a pulled rotator cuff in his shoulder, and he played all these shows with this pulled rotator cuff. You couldn't even tell.
Oh
It
my
was just
gosh.
incredible.
Amazing.
But
Amazing.
Scriabin is kind of what got me really into piano, because after My Hero and Stickman kind of disbanded, that's when I decided to invest in a piano. So I bought the C3 first, the
Mhm.
6.1, and I learned probably uh, 24, 25 different Scriabin preludes. So like all my focus was on Scriabin. And
Wow. Wow.
yeah,
And what
that
was it?
music really got me heavily into piano. And
Wow. And what was it about Scriabin? Usually, because usually what people, there it's like, oh, Beethoven or Mozart or
yeah,
Chopin. Scriabin is kind of a less, I mean, not as well known as these
yeah.
other guys. So I'm kind of curious, what was it about Scriabin's music?
I heard Horowitz play Scriabin, and it was kind of just there was something about the music. The Opus 2 number 1 prelude,
Mhm.
the C minor, the famous. Na, 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 na. It's really like deep, dark,
Yeah.
super depressing. And Scriabin wrote it when he was 15. But
Amazing.
I heard Horowitz play it at the Moscow concert, and that was, I don't know, there was something about that music. I can't even really put it into words. It was just some kind of attraction. So then, I started listening to his preludes and that whole Opus 11. Of course, you know, he was really into Chopin a lot. You could hear
Right.
it, but I think, Scriabin's preludes are just as good as Chopin's. That's my personal opinion. But I don't know. There was something really magical about Scriabin to me. I couldn't put it into words. It was very hard. It was just something. He has this way of creating sound where he could be like super simple and the piece could be super short, like a minute, but like it's so dense. Everything
Mm.
inside of the music is, it draws you in, and it's just really short, but the density of it and how much music is inside of it, and there's that element of jazz and some of it,
Mm.
like his later opus stuff like 33, and borderlining on some of it, just like almost psychotic stuff. I didn't play that because it's a little harder to understand, but he's also almost atonal and some of it at the sonatas, but I never got into the sonatas. They were just a little too strange for me. But, I recorded Scriabin, the Opus 11, number 5, on the Horowitz Steinway at
Wow.
Sherman Clay in San Francisco.
Hmm.
So when that piano was on tour,
Yeah.
I knew the saleswoman who
Oh.
sold me my first C3, and I said, "Hey, can I come?" Because she didn't tell me, someone else told me the piano was there, and so I asked her, "Can I come play the Horowitz Steinway?" She's like, "Yeah, sure." Well, she didn't know I was going to show up with a cart full of recording gear, microphones, and
That's
she's
awesome.
like, "What's this? You look like a homeless person." So I'm like, I'm just gonna record really quick. So I was in there for like an hour and a half on this
Wow.
piano, and I
Good
actually recorded some
idea.
strings. Yeah. So
Seriously.
she's
Yeah.
like, yeah, it was amazing, and but I'm trying to remember. Several years before that, the Scriabin family actually lives in Pacifica, California.
Oh, wow.
So Dmitri Kogan is the pianist, and he is the great grandson of Alexander Scriabin,
Wow.
and his grandfather was Vladimir Sofroninsky. So I ended up meeting him at a concert, and a couple times and seen him. Didn't realize who he was, and then it was like through comments on YouTube, I found someone who knew all this stuff about the Scriabin family. So I just sent the guy a private message, and I was like, wow, how do you know all this stuff about the Scriabin family? And he's like, I'm Scriabin's great grandson. I was like, what? Get out of here. And
Wow.
it said Pacifica, California. Well, it turned out to be this other guy's brother. So then, I ended up actually going to his house in Pacifica.
Oh,
So
wow.
here I am, and I'm Scriabin's, his mother, right? This is like, really close bloodline to Scriabin. It was Scriabin's granddaughter.
Oh,
I got to
wow.
meet her. Here she is in the house. I walk in, I'm like, oh my God.
That is
Wow.
amazing. So your
Yeah.
teacher, your piano education comes from Scriabin's lineage, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it was a very short period of time, and the time of my life when I was like right at the end of my alcoholism. So I quit drinking like right after that. Before that, I was a little consumed with alcohol. So it's been, let's see, it'll be 11 years coming up very soon here on the 22nd, yeah, of this
Awesome.
month. 11 years sober.
Good, 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 good.
But yeah, that changed everything. I mean, that's one of the reasons I went back to school too. But
Mhm.
yeah, his Dmitry Kogan too. He's a really great accompanist. He accompanies a lot of people, and really sought after guy for accompanying people. Which I see Naomi was really into that too.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. I'm curious how did you experience the Horowitz piano? What was that like when you were
It
recording?
was it was nerve wracking. It
Really?
was it well because I'm there recording,
Okay.
right? So and that's another thing, like when you're recording piano and then you have to record the video as well. So I had to set up all the gear, set up my iPhone, set the levels on the laptop and all of that to get
Right.
all of that just right. And this is before I didn't know as much about recording back then. I've
Mhm.
got the plaque on my wall here. It was, wow, January 16th, 2013 was when I played that piano.
Oh,
But yeah, because there's so much to think about. And there was a tuner who was there. He wasn't in the room, he was like downstairs or somewhere where there was noise. So I kind of had to figure that in there.
oh, yeah.
And it just took like a tremendous amount of deep breathing before I played and like going, I can get this, because I wanted to get a take as quickly as
Right.
possible because the woman's boss is going to come back and the time limit to play that piano is like 15 minutes.
Oh my
So here I
gosh.
am with all these mics in the place and I was there for over an hour. But it was incredible. It was very difficult to get the pedal to not make clicking sounds. So I had to
Oh.
adapt my technique, my pedal technique, so the microphones wouldn't pick it up because the pedal was just so wobbly.
Wow. So it
So
couldn't be tightened or WD-40'd?
no, it was really just rickety.
Oh,
It was need to be replaced really because the piano is like touring all over the world. But
right.
so anyway, I get under the piano to see, oh, maybe there's something loose or something. And then laying on the ground, I look up and there's hundreds of signatures underneath this piano.
Yeah, I signed that piano.
Did you? Oh,
I
God. I might have a picture of it. It's on Facebook.
did. Long time, like back in 2012.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. So, yeah, I could have seen it then. That's funny. I wonder if it's on Facebook. And I was like, I didn't have the nerve to sign it myself. I'm like, who am I?
It felt weird. It felt weird. Like, why am I using a Sharpie on a piano that's like one of the greatest pianists? Like,
Yeah, it was really really nerve wracking, because when I got the Scriabin recording, I knew at the end I was just like, oh, okay, I can breathe now. But like, there's a certain balance where when you're recording, you don't want to overdo things. So sometimes I can like I have this technique of like being almost nonchalant, kind of just like, where you don't put too much emotion into it, but it's not too cold, where you find this balance,
mhm.
to achieve a take that's without mistakes, which,
Mm.
and it's like um, with the album I did with Marilyn Mitchell, all the drums on that record, all of that was one take. So, I mean, it doesn't mean it was the first take, but all of my takes that I did on that album were all completely all the way through. So there's no punch ins.
Wow. Was that
Um,
by luck or did that was that
no, that's total design. Total,
really?
yes. So the way I
What?
produced that record was we would lay down just a rough drum track. I just use Logic and create drummer, whatever, and then we build the song. So we build it like this one here I have up is we got 74 tracks. And what I do is, we build the song and we get everything in the song pretty much done, and the drums are the last thing because I want all the emotion and all of the orchestra and every part has to be just right. So
Mhm.
then when I go to play the drums, my emotional connection to the music is deeper that way. But to record it all the way through, I think big picture, and I think since I recorded that Opus 62 Chopin Nocturne, that big picture thing really came in useful. Actually, if you think about that in terms of it coming over into music drumming wise, it's more musical to me. It's more about music and big picture. So
Yeah.
like when I am recording Marilyn songs, I think big picture from start to finish. How soft am I going to start? How loud am I going to be here? How much am I going to bring it down here? Where am I going to, increase the intensity? And then, where to stop the intensity? So, like,
Mhm.
all of that was pre thought out from mixing the music working with Marilyn on the production to make the song a certain way. So when it comes down to the final thing, which is doing the drums, the song is all there. So it helps the song. I found that if we complete the song first, it makes it so much better in terms of how the music comes across emotionally and all the other details. So yeah, for me, recording it all the way through with no punch-ins was always really important to it. It's different than recording piano for me, since I have so many more years on drums, but I like that feeling of going, okay, if I screw up, I have to start over again.
Hmm.
I like that feeling when it comes to recording drums. It's like an inspiration because you start getting to the end, you're like, yeah, I'm really close, and you
I
can
know,
feel
right?
it, and then you nail it, and it's like, yeah.
Uh-huh. That's always a good feeling. I remember recording with this kind of thrash metal punky band in LA last year. And the first take, I almost got the whole piano part. I did like tinkly piano, classical stuff, over their kind of thrashy metal stuff. And the first take, it was just like, oh my God, I almost got it. But then, the guy just wanted to punch it in. But it was kind of like a relief for me because I was like, I don't want to take like 5 hours to record my part. I'm all like anxious and like nervous about taking up too much time to record my parts because I just really finished writing them the day before. And
Oh
so I was like,
wow.
okay, this is like kind of cramming and stuff like that because I was still trying to finish my finals at school. And so
Yeah.
but I like the idea of if you're able to record that all in one take because I feel like there's an energy to it. There's just like versus when you're kind of punching in, it's kind of like you kind of feel a little bit like a puzzle, I guess. It's kind of from one thing
Yeah.
to another, and then it doesn't really sound like it flows in like a performative style. It's kind of like a
Yeah.
computer could have played that.
Exactly.
So,
It makes a huge difference when you do that, and I always try to get people to play something all the way through, or sing it all the way through. Just big picture. I'm like, okay, you have to think of the whole entire composition,
mhm.
where to start. And I was going to ask you, I was watching that rock thing where you were practicing, and that too, that I'd never seen that trick that you did with the
Oh yeah.
with the fingers. But like,
um,
to me, Rachmaninoff's Second Piano Concerto, the only greater piece of music for me personally is Beethoven's Ninth, but it's so close to me.
uh,
That second piano concerto is so close to Beethoven's Ninth. They're like neck and neck in terms of my personal all-time favorite piece of music. Like,
wow.
when did you start learning that
Um,
monstrosity?
Gosh, well, I played the Rock 3 for my senior recital at Mills College like a while ago. And that was kind of like my project that I was working on for many years. And then I was like, you know what? The third piano concerto is so masculine. I wanted something more feminine to kind of balance it out because I just felt like the Rock 3 is like a marathon. The
It's
Rock 2
crazy.
is not as hard. It's more lyrical. It's more beautiful. It's the more famous one. And it was kind of
Yeah.
interesting that he was hypnotized, before, because he had a writer's block right after his first
Yeah.
symphony. And so um, he wrote the second piano concerto and then dedicated it to his shrink. But it's just it's just so memorable that melody da dee da 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 dee da ba da and chromatic, and I feel like the
Yeah.
orchestra and the piano have like equal part. It's kind of more of an equal partnership, whereas in the Rock 3 it's more
Yes.
about the piano.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
The second movement's really weird how the piano is like the accompaniment, you know?
yeah, yeah. So I kind of like that more equal kind of thing. And like when I was talking with Naomi on our two piano forehand Zoom podcast thing, like I don't particularly enjoy being a solo performer as a pianist. I love playing solo piano repertoire, but I don't particularly like to perform it. I'd rather do two piano forehand work or something like that where I'm working with collaboratively with other people. There's
Yep.
just something that's like, I don't know, I kind of like the band, like having multiple people in the band rather than it just being me performing, but maybe I need to get over my, playing solo.
Anxiety. Yeah, no, for me, there's that, playing in public, like, it's always, for me, and like, no, I don't do recitals. It's hard enough for me to learn piano. I mean, to learn a piece of music, it takes everything I have because I'm not a gifted sight reader. I'm not a gifted pianist. Anything I have from piano is all hard work, all of
Mm,
it. But it's also many years of listening to music, that
right.
and having many years of listening to everyone from Arau to Horowitz to Rubinstein, whoever it be. Um, that does make a big difference, and the whole listening experience for me, like you guys were talking about. You and Colin, like not listening to other people when you're learning a piece of music.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I do exactly the opposite. I listen to
Uh,
everyone because, for me, it's like Rebecca Bogart had told me. She says, "Oh, you can't improve on the piano by listening to someone else." And I was thinking to myself, that's not true. For me, it's not. Because I'm able to, since I learned drums, in this manner by ear, is
mhm.
how I learned to play from a very young age. Learning by ear for me, like all the nuances that other people do, you hear someone do something and go, I love that. I'm going to use it. I'm going to take it and I'm going to use it and make it mine. But I always make, the piece my own. But I always take and pull parts from people, certain things that, pianists do, whether it's Brendel or, Pariah or, like Pariah, for me, that Opus 10 number one, no one's better. But I don't like his ending because he does this thing where he goes, from forte just in decrescendos to like really quiet, which to
Mhm.
me, it kind of defeats the purpose of that piece, which is
Mhm.
mostly forte. But I think
Yeah.
Pariah was probably thinking, everyone else does this, I'm going to do that. But how can you tell Murray Pariah he's wrong? Like, I'm still bummed that we didn't get to meet him that time. We were, in the front row at Davies Hall talking about the piano, and then we like just missed him.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you also got to meet Michael Tilson Thomas too.
Yeah, that was something else,
What
man.
was that like? Like, what did you guys talk about?
Oh, just the concert that he was doing that night, which was at Davies with Emanuel Axe, Beethoven's Fourth Piano Concerto.
Okay.
So it was Emanuel Axe who was giving a master class at San Francisco Music Community Music Center,
Hmm.
which is right there on Cap Street. So it's like Cap Street and 16th and Mission. Um, and I went to a master class there, and I'm sitting there. I'm like, oh my god, that's MTT. It's just like, yeah, it was mind blowing. And he was so nice.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
to be able to meet him, yeah, that's. I mean, I was going to the symphony when he first came here from the London Symphony Orchestra, and it's just so funny how he ended up doing all that stuff with Metallica. Who,
Right.
they lived right across the street from me here on Carlton, 3132 Carlton, the Metallica mansion they call it.
Oh,
That's
wow.
where they wrote, I think, the second and the third albums at that house of Cliff Burton, who was living in L.A., I think it was, and then he came. Sorry, Metallica was in L.A. Cliff Burton was living here, and then he had Metallica move out here because he said he would only join the band if they moved out here, and they did. So,
Wow. That's pretty
but
cool.
I mean, I used to hang out with them, when they were nobody.
Huh?
They showed up to a gig with my friend who brought me down to Church Street. Chip, he was in a speed metal band called Control, and they were playing the Mabuhay Gardens. Metallica was headlining. So Metallica showed up with no gear, and they got all their gear stolen. So they had to
Oh,
use
God.
everyone else's gear from Control and another band from some other guy I actually went to high school with. Terry Lauderdale was the guitar player, and another band that night. So they ended up using all of everyone else's gear. Metallica had no gear because they got
Oh,
their
my
van
God.
stolen. But yeah, I was bringing my friends from high school down to Turk Street and then to these shows. And they were huge Metallic fans, and I was like, yeah, they're pretty damn great. But I would have never thought they would turn out to be so massive, you know.
Right.
And then playing with the symphony, and wow, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can orchestrate anything, right? You could bring an orchestra on board with anything, but it's just kind of cool that like, you got the two different genres that are kind of at different extremes from one another, but actually, the complexity of both of them kind of makes them kind of common.
Yep, I
So,
totally agree. And I mean, if you look at Beethoven, for me, metal and classical are actually very similar. You know, like
mhm.
Beethoven, the Grosse Fugue. I
Right,
mean,
right.
dun, dun, I mean that's very metal. The Fifth Symphony,
Mhm.
Beethoven, the Appassionata, the ending,
Right.
it's very metal. And Ingve Malmsteen was kind of the first metal guy to really get into that classical, but was more Baroque. But
Mhm.
yeah, I think that the classical influence on metal is pretty obvious. And
Right, right.
the Moody Blues kind of, I mean, they're more classic rock, but they
Mhm.
got the orchestra in there, and yeah, so.
Right. Also, Shostakovich, is kind of
Mm,
seen as like the metal composer,
yep,
the Fifth Symphony,
yep,
just being so heavy and just so like, intense and him using like the lower end of the spectrum of all the instruments to kind of, you feel that those frequencies in your body. And
yeah,
so it's like, how can you not like headbang? And
yeah,
same thing with like Stravinsky. Like when I went to see Rite of
yeah.
Spring a few years ago, it was like there were people that were headbanging, you know, but it'd be kind of funny because it would be heavy and hard hitting for a little while, and then it would go into this little light fluttery, with the flutes and the clarinets
Yeah.
and stuff.
And the influence of the Rite of Spring, like, are you familiar with Free Salamander exhibit?
Um, I've heard of them.
So it's the second version of Sleepy Time Gorilla Museum.
Okay.
So with Nils and Dan Rathbun, and then David Shamrock's on drums and Michael Millender. And I mean, these guys they're so intense. It's just super intense. I don't want to define them, but prog, math rock, whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Incredible. They entered a show, right? They came right off their bus and they had like all these instruments, and they came in playing the Rite of Spring. Like they walked through the bar. The video's on
Wow.
YouTube, and
Wow.
it's just hilarious. But that like Stravinsky influenced so many of these metal bands, the Bay Area, especially prog stuff.
Oh yeah.
Mr. Bungle, and you know, yeah. So he's a huge influence on.
Right. Well, Stravinsky, he kind of was very influenced by Debussy. I mean, there's more composers, but how he would kind of use the whole tone scale. He's the octatonic scale. He would use the different modes. Um, and then there's also Messiaen, who would kind of take the modes of limited transposition. So just kind of doing different things, like kind of limiting yourself to certain notes in a scale, but also intervals, kind of like Ligeti would kind of use certain
Oh yeah.
cells, of music to kind of build upon an idea. But yeah, I do think that you can kind of use a style of a composer. Like I remember Stravinsky, I forget who he was with, but he ended up taking a piece of music and Stravinskyizing it. So just, making the rhythms more syncopated, using more, maybe notes that are in a certain specific mode. Um, and so there's ways that stylistically that he's doing he could take any basic piece of music and like add his own character to it, and it would kind of take on, like it would be something that he would write. So I definitely like the polystylistic thing. I definitely think that I'm trying to incorporate it myself.
Yeah.
It's
The,
like a lot of my students, come to me and they'll just be either classically trained or they don't want to read music. And so I try to really encourage them to do improvisation. I encourage them to write their own music, to really, really understand harmony and melody. Like the Bach chorales, I have a lot of my students play through the Bach chorales just because they're great sight readable pieces and you can really learn about harmony. And I feel like harmony, I mean, harmony is kind of, I don't know, for me, it's like that's the driving force for music is harmony.
yep.
Um, I feel like, when I first listened to Secret Chiefs 3, I really liked the energy and the build up and the instruments and the timbre. But one thing I was like, well, why aren't they doing more stuff with harmony? Because that would kind of really take their music to a new level. Um, you know, not a critique, but just like I was like,
Right.
oh, that would just. But I see like if you turn complexity up in certain areas, like if you're turning complexity up in timbre or stylistically or rhythmically, then if you also bring in harmony, that's going to maybe make it a little bit too busy sounding.
Yeah, that's like why
So
Trey Spruance was like, "Oh, I wanted to do this Western, non-Western tuning, and then this and that." And he's but he can't do that in Mr. Bungle because you
right.
got him, you got Mike Patton, and then Trevor on bass. Like it's too much. You know.
Yeah, it's like what is the ear really going to listen to? Otherwise it's going to sound like noise. And I mean noise can be great too. I love my noise bands and I love my experimental stuff. But I feel like the music that really sticks is like where it's kind of like stuff comes to the foreground, stuff goes to the background, stuff is in the
Yeah.
midground. And so, there's like it's all planned. But I remember that was one thing that I was like, oh, what if they did, kind of like this harmonically kind of driven thing. Like I don't know if you know the composer John Adams.
Yeah.
He's a post minimalist. He actually did a Zoom call with my class one time,
Wow.
and he actually writes out the chord progression. This is weird because he's like, oh, I'll take like a jazz standard and use the chord progression, write out the chord progression, and then compose the melodies and the themes and all that stuff on top of them. Like that seems so like backwards, but it's kind of cool.
Wow.
You have your like skeleton, your structure. So I
Yeah,
don't know, it's
it's
just
like
different ways of composing.
Ligeti. His stuff. Stickman was always trying to get me into it. I wasn't familiar with the first time I heard it was this pianist Greg Anderson, who's part of the Anderson and Rowe duo. I know you know them.
Sounds familiar.
They did the Liber Tango with on one piano, two
Oh, okay.
hands, and it was like they say they called it piano porn
Okay.
because it was all sexy and all but he's gay and I don't anyway.
Uh-huh.
So I kind of became acquaintances with them. I seen a bunch of their shows and gotten advice from them on playing Barber but Greg plays that Devil's Staircase.
Oh yeah. The
Oh
etude.
my God, it's so hard. But the other time I was turned on to his music was with I saw Simon Rattle and Barbara Hannigan, the conductor.
Oh, she's amazing.
Oh my God,
Incredible.
yeah, that where she came out in that little skirt and the ponytails, and they did the whole bit, the dance of the
That was which opera was that from?
one from one of his operas. Yeah,
Gosh, I should know this.
yeah, she came out and chewing the gum and she did that whole thing. I first time I saw it, I watched it like 20 times. It's like just so good. It's music that makes you like just your jaws hanging. It's like when I listen to Secret Chiefs 3 or Mr. Bungle, you just like I can't get enough of this music. It's so good. Just to listen
Right.
to it, but it's just so bizarre that I think you just go, yeah, that's way cool. It's not like Rock Second or Beethoven's Pastoral. It's just like at the other end of the spectrum.
Right. Yeah, they're
Really,
not developing it harmonically at that point. It's more about texture and rhythm.
yeah,
I actually analyzed some of the etudes that Ligeti did. There's a lot of really cool rhythmic stuff there. that I feel like Frank Zappa does a lot of the isorhythm stuff where
Yeah.
he'll kind of have these different phrases of rhythms, and then the melody might be longer, but he continues in that rhythmic style. Um, and so it kind of stuff kind of overlaps. And that's something that I feel like he kind of gets a lot of the modern music ways of developing rhythm and things that you
Yeah.
can kind of do. Um, I do like how Liggity kind of he's kind of, it's like a machine, like his music kind of, it's like a machine that's like starting up a lot of the times, and then something happens, some wrench gets thrown into the machine and something crazy happens, and then it kind of unfolds in a different way. So it's really interesting how his music develops. And then I don't know if you've heard the music ricercata, where he'll like, I mean, he gave me some ideas like when I
Sounds
limited
familiar.
myself to like writing a piece of music with only certain notes. So I'd use like A or A and B flat. Well, he did that. I think he kind of goes out of the pattern after the fourth etude, I think. But it's like, how do you develop a piece of music using only two notes? You know, you got to get creative with these limits. So he would really impose these limits. I mean, in Kubrick's Eyes Wide Shut, that's, you hear the musica ricercata number two
Yeah.
in that. And yeah, I just feel like he's so great at like unfolding ideas, and like just with the small amount of ingredients that he has, how he's able to kind of really take this idea and kind of run with it. And yeah, he's been a big influence. I really like the etudes. There's three books of etudes. I've
Oh.
tried to play some of them. They are so freaking difficult.
Oh my God.
Like
I've
you,
seen, yeah.
like sometimes like covering four staves, like for one pianist,
Oh,
like
jeez.
how is that possible? Um,
I
so
thought
it has
three
some,
was bad.
I know, yeah. So anyone that plays Liggity is like, I think I don't think I've really heard very many people play Liggity just because it's so scary. It's kind of
Yeah, I
like an
saw Hugh
area.
Wong do it at Davies in the
That's,
front
yeah,
row.
I heard she did one
Oh
of the
my
etudes.
God. Just mind
Yeah,
blowing. But I
he's
was just thinking
brave.
about what you were saying about the monkey wrench. I think it was Trey Spruance from Secret Chief 3 said that Mr. Bungle had gotten some of their ideas from their style from this guy who would take like blank piano rolls and just like randomly punch notes into a piano roll and then play it back. And it would just sound like absolute just trash. And he was like, "Yeah, we got our style a lot from that because you
Right.
know, like that's what I was listening to their stuff the other night. I'm like, how can they do this live? And you just go on YouTube. It's like there they are.
That's hilarious. I know which composer you're talking about. I can't remember his name though. Um, gosh, who was it? Um, it'll come to me.
Yeah,
But yeah, sometimes you experiments. I mean, the whole thing with John Cage was to like, take out the composer's influence in writing a piece of music. What happens if I drop these sticks, and how the sticks measure up with the lines tells you, how much reverb or how much the loudness or
yeah,
some intensity is. So it's kind of interesting that we kind of like with John Cage, the whole kind of opening up the doors of what is music, what is considered music. Not just, it doesn't
yeah,
just have to be a melody, it doesn't have to have harmony, it could be like the scratching of the my nails on my desk or something like that.
yeah.
So
Oh,
anyways,
I was gonna ask you, how did you get into busking with telegraphic birds?
telegraphic.
I,
Well, it's funny. We've been called therapeutic birds. We've been called psychotic birds. It's telepathic birds. But
I'm sorry.
it's all good. No,
Blech.
it's another name
I
to
know
add.
better than that.
No, it's another nickname. It's kind of funny actually. Because telepathic is such an unusual word. I feel like people don't know what telepathic means.
Right, it's what birds do, really.
Right. Right.
That's. I
Yeah.
mean,
So we try not to call it busking. We're doing these underground kind of guerrilla style shows where,
yeah,
like our favorite venues have all shut down. What are musicians supposed to do? Right? We still want to play shows, but we can't wait for COVID to be done because that's who knows how long it's gonna
yeah,
keep going for.
yep,
So Dave, bass player Dave, had the great idea. Well, why don't we get a generator? We could play on the beach. We could play in the park. We could play in a parking lot. We could play at someone's house or at someone's trailer park. Who knows? So we ended up doing that, and we got two generators, and we just started playing, and the response that we got from people were like, oh my god, I haven't heard live music. There's kids that have not heard live music because everything's been shut down, so it's
yeah.
like you see like kids like dancing to the music, and you're just like, oh my god, this is so
This
cool.
is
Like,
so great.
so
Yeah,
yeah, we're just, we just did a California tour, went down to San Diego and back, and just played at different places. And we just play until the cops come, or in case, until someone shuts us down. But that's rarely happened, to be honest. Like only
cool.
once in Sacramento were we, threatened by a store owner, and we got the guy at the comedy club was angry at us, and because he was like filming, and he said the music was too loud. But he had told us you guys could play in the street, so we
Yeah,
did. And yeah, it's just weird because you don't know who you're gonna end up talking to or meeting. And so it's just this
yeah,
big adventure. And there's a part of me that really likes spontaneity. And so when we would play shows back in the day at venues, it's like you have to get 10 people to come, you have to get them to buy drinks, you have to buy tickets. And it's like, what if we just bring the music to people, bypass the venue, just bring people the music. That way, they can leave if they want to, they could stick around, they can, buy some music, they can buy some merchandise. It's like, it's kind of just freed up everything. And, when you're playing in front of a beautiful beach, it's like, you can't beat that. It makes me not want to play at a bar anymore.
yeah. Different
So,
environment. Dave and Adam came over here and mixed some stuff a while back.
oh, nice. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I think he mentioned because we were talking about Mo. We were
Mm.
talking about someone like smashing pianos, and I said, that sounds like my friend Mo. And he's like, oh my God, you know Mo? And like, yeah. And then he goes, you know Fiona? I'm like, yeah.
Right. Yeah, Death of a Piano. I think the last time he performed that was what, 2017 or 2018?
Yeah.
And so I played the piano before it got smashed
Oh
at the
God.
it was in Oakland somewhere.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think taking performance art, to a whole new level. There was a Jackie Lockwood who would burn pianos and record the sound.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it's just like, what can you do now? So it's like, what about destroying a piano? People destroy guitars all the time. What about
Yeah.
pianos? So yeah, it's very interesting. Well, we should kind of wrap up. Is
Right
there anything
on.
else you want to say?
Let's see. Fiona's a piano teacher.
Well, we can always do part two if there's more
Yeah,
topics we want to
and
cover.
catch tele something
Telepathic,
telemarketing birds.
telemarketing birds, telepathic birds, therapeutic birds, same thing. But yeah, but
So if you, I what I'd like to do is I'd like to record a really good pianist on my piano. That's what I'm looking to find.
okay,
Someone
yeah.
like
So
or I really like working with individual songwriters, people who have music who want to bring it to life. I prefer working with individual songwriters. It's so much better. It's like you
mm-hmm.
build a relationship with one person, and then we do all the instruments, and you don't have to deal with a bunch of other band members being a
Right,
pain.
right. I
You
mean,
get
that's
end up
the
getting
whole
good
thing with the
revenue.
backing tracks was like, I was like, no, I can just do the drums. We just have a drum machine, and have recorded bass and stuff like that. Like, I wanted to make it as easy as possible, just like, but no, now we have a drummer.
Yeah.
It's all good. um and yeah, we'll post all your links below this video so people can contact you.
Awesome.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you so much, Craig. It was great talking to you and
Thank you,
hearing all your
Fiona. I
stories and stuff.
appreciate you thinking of me. That's very nice.
Yeah, totally. We'll have to go to the symphony sometime or to a concert or,
Yeah,
show, or a master class.
I'm going to see Huja Wong and Evgeny Kissin for the first time
Oh my
in
gosh.
March and April. So that'll be fun.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Keep me posted. I'd probably like to come to that.
Cool.
Awesome. Okay, Craig. We'll see you later.
Take care.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.